Hi, thank you for watching this video. This is the May video from Parks Ag Solutions, and we just call this our marketing assistance. So I did have a subject and material all planned out for May, but here within the last week and a half, there's been a lot of phone calls and there's been a lot of one-on-one conversations about the downward trending markets, especially in corn and soybeans. So I have scrapped that here with in the last 2 days actually, and just made a list because as I was talking to people, even myself, I was like, boy, this seems to be really negative. I mean, just some of the terms that I've been hearing out and about is point of no return, dumpster fire, the end when it comes to prices and rallies. And it was starting to kind of affect my mindset as well. So what I did is I just made a list of things that were positive information wise that were in the market and things that were negative information wise into the market. And so I'm going to go over that because I was surprised and maybe you'll be surprised as well. My information for this video came from USDA reports, Agrisampo North America with Brooks and Sterling, university information, as well as my own past experience and even what I'm currently observing. So again, this is very crude. This is just a couple of lists, and then at the end we'll talk about some information to help going forward. So let's talk about negative information, kind of focused on the new crop at first. So we've seen slow exports or even export cancellations on corn. So sometimes beans have been very slow to none, while we have seen some cancellations on the corn. Large Brazilian crop. So we had a big soybean crop out of Brazil. The Safrinha crop is growing right now. They already say it looks really good and planting conditions went well. And so far, growing conditions are going well. So that just means that there's more for the world to buy out of Brazil. Can't deny there's negative macros as far as information. Mortgage applications were down this month, April compared to March. The spec funds, we continue to see selling from them. And many commodities, not just corn and beans, but many commodities are on a downward trending motion right now. And some of the negative information that's affecting more of the new crop. Hey, planting progress on both corn and beans, ahead of the 5-year average on both. Larger old crop ending stocks. So how that affects new crop is the more 22 crop we carry into 23 crop, the less of the 23 crop that we need. Can we talk about the May USDA report for a moment? We knew the numbers were going to be big, right? When we're talking about acres and production and yield. But the numbers they came out with was pretty darn big. So ending stocks on the May report actually ended up a little bigger than what was expected. So they had more acres of corn planted this year compared to last year, and the same number of beans planted last year. So that corn has to be coming from other crops going into corn. So on paper, there's just a lot of supply, right? Big supplies, not only here in the United States, but around the world. And so so we just continue to see that downward trending momentum. And the RSI has proved that, right? When we look at RSI values for both old crop and new crop, they're low. They're astonishing low. Okay, so so that's some of the negative information. I'm sure there's more. I'm sure you could probably send me a message and come up with a couple more, but those were the ones, like I said, this was really quick. A list of things that I came up with that was negatively affecting the markets. But I am a pretty positive person, so I wanted to see what I could come up with on the positive side. Was I going to come up with anything? Because what we're hearing as far as newsletters, as far as what's coming across on the radio, as far as YouTube channels, or any information that we're getting, it's all pretty negative. But there's always two sides to a coin, right? So let's look at the other side. I was surprised at how big this list actually was. Okay, maybe you will be too. So soybean stocks, old crop stocks are relatively tight compared to when we look at past years. So US stocks of soybeans are relatively tight compared to other years. Cattle, they continue to be strong. We have had a little bit of a sell-off now and again, but for the most part, they are still trending higher. Argentina had a horrible crop. They experienced drought that really hurt their crop. So what that does, that just changes the complexity in South America. So they need that crop from somewhere, right? They export so much meal out of Argentina. So they're going to have to import some grain, and that is a change. Crude oil did hit a low not very long ago, but they bounced off pretty quickly. Like they went down, just was there real quickly, and then bounced back up. And we've also seen a slight increase out of the United States of crude oil to Asia. Now, I'm not talking China because that's not our market, but other Asian countries are seeing an uptick and are buying more crude. Housing. So we talked about some macros on the negative side, but on the positive side, this month, or the last month of April, we saw an increase in housing starts compared to March. Technically, this market is oversold. It doesn't matter what technicals you put into these charts, how you chart them, what lines you put in, it doesn't matter. They're negative. And they are starting to land on that oversold condition. Again, the RSI has been low on both corn and beans. I mean, we're talking like in the high 20s and the low 30s as far as RSI. So then the question becomes, usually you don't see RSI just staying low for a long extended amount of time. You do start to usually see that come back. Making my way down my list here. Ukraine, and I know we're all kind of getting tired of Ukraine, but production is going to be cut this year. There's just no way, especially, I guess they grow a lot of corn and wheat in that southeastern part of their country that has just been really devastated. So we know their production isn't going to be even what it was last year. Now, weather. And this is a big one. In my opinion, this is a big one. And this is probably the biggest one out of all those things that I've mentioned. We need to talk about weather. And the next 60 days is going to be critical as far as, our growing season. So we know that we're switching from La Nina to El Nino, right? So La Nina, neutral, then El Nino. Now, this winter, all the meetings, all the newsletters, everything was saying we were going to see El Nino enter into the United States and affecting the weather into the fall and winter. So we were hearing, hey, when you guys are harvesting, it's going to be dry. You should have wide open windows. But what is happening now is we're seeing the ocean levels increase more, get hotter than what was expected at the equator. And that's what this is all about. So then the question becomes, what if El Nino shows up in June or July or August? What happens then? If we see those oceans continue to increase in temperature, do we then see El Nino showing up into the United States and affecting our weather sooner? So I'm going to pull up a whiteboard. Pull that up. Let's see if, oh, it worked. There we go. Okay, so what this is, so what does El Nino affect? And we've heard that many of times, right? What does El Nino affect? And as you can see here, and this is great data from NOAA, you can see that in the kind of pinkish orange color, that is El Nino since 1996. And then it has a average from 1991 to 2020. And then, of course, all seasons, right? So if we just compare El Nino as far as storms, major storms throughout the United States, you can see that it's a 9.6 compared to a neutral season, it's at a 13.4. Hurricanes, which affects, our area here, we usually see hurricanes come up through the Gulf, bring a decent amount of rain to our area, but the amount of hurricanes goes down as well. So 4.9 instead of 7.2. And then a category 3 hurricane, which is, larger, brings in more rain, only 1.7 as compared to a 2.7. So we see El Nino lowering storms, hurricanes, and larger hurricanes, which, like I said, changes our weather. So let me try to close that. So major rain activity in the central US goes down. Now you still see a decent amount of rain in the southeast, but not so much in the central Corn Belt. Past years that were El Nino. So 2014, 15, 16, those growing seasons were considered El Nino. And of course, the big one that everybody remembers is it was 2012. Now, the current production numbers that I kind of talked on the negative side, where we were talking about production of corn, production of soybeans, high yield. To come up with those numbers, we're pretty much talking near perfect growing conditions. And in that situation, that's not a major El Nino affecting us. Current production. Sorry, again, these notes are pretty rough. Now, let's take our current weather forecast. We've already seen going out to the June 3rd, so now we can get forecasts that go all the way out to June 3rd. We are already seeing a slightly drier Corn Belt area with a slightly wetter southeast area of the United States and of the Corn Belt. That's very El Nino-like. Nobody is really saying that yet, but if you just look out what the weather trend between now and June 3rd is going to be in that forecast, it is very El Nino-like. Now, NOAA, in their extended forecast, they are calling for a drier June, July, August, because they do forecast on a larger range as well. They are calling for drier conditions, or I'm sorry, they are calling for warmer conditions, so the temperature to be higher than normal, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if we continue to get the rains, right? So we can take the heat as long as the rain is coming as well. But I think the question becomes, what if you have that heat and don't have that rain? That's a question mark right there. Current conditions, and I'm just saying for around here. So I'm in Southern Indiana. I have clients in Southern Illinois, Southern Indiana, and in Kentucky. And what we keep on seeing is at the beginning of the week, they're calling rains for, say, Friday, Saturday, or over the weekend. And it starts out at a pretty high range, 70, 75%, 80, 85%. But as we go through the week, we see those percentages start to drop. And that's a pattern I just don't like. Considering the calendar, okay? Considering we're talking the middle of May right now, and we're already starting these type of patterns, it is a little concerning. It's something I consider to be a red flag when we're already dropping chances of precipitation in May. So now, don't get me wrong, we are in a heavily sold market that is currently on the downtrend. So it'll take something big. It'll take a big story. It'll take a big event to get this ship kind of back on even keel. But hopefully this list has shown you that that is possible. And I just hit my microphone, so I'm sorry. So now let's talk about, so we do have things out there that could take us in a positive direction, right? But now let's talk about what if things don't go in a positive direction. What are things to consider? What are things to look for? So let's say we continue to stay negative. Growing conditions are great. We are at the 181.5 bushels an acre. We planted all the corn. We planted all the beans. So you're looking at something below $12 beans, and you're looking below something $5 corn for fall delivery. Okay. So you got to be creative in that type of situation, and you've got to kind of reach outside of your normal markets of what you would usually do. So a couple of suggestions I have is remember the carry market. So when I started doing this morning, December corn was trading at 507. March was trading at 517. And May was trading at 523. So you see how that continued to stair step. That is carry in the market. Beans isn't nearly as dramatic, but it's still there. November beans, 1203. January, 1213. And then March, 1214. And remember, why is there not a big difference right now between January and March? Brazil and their crop. So your best plan of action, or how you can help your price, is to put something in the bin into the fall and then forward sell that, right? Put it into the bin, whatever you're harvesting in October, and then sell that for December, January, February, March delivery, and capture some of that carry. That's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is seeking out different markets, processors, feeders, millers that buy those products of corn, beans, wheat is a great example. So instead of your maybe local market that feeds into the export or just feeds into your local market, you could see something better as far as a cash price goes to one of those end users. So here's an example. So maybe a feeder or an end user that's turning that grain into a product is 30 cents more than what market you normally sell into. So even if it's a little bit further away, check on that trucking. Does it cost an extra 20 cents to get there? If it does, okay, you're going to pay 20 cents in trucking, but you're selling your grain at 30 cents higher. So you're still net better. And I guess that's kind of a caveat to that, is make sure you're checking your trucking rates and to different markets, and make sure you're checking on that, because they can change. And I know sometimes in our area, you can find somebody going in a direction that is going to be picking up meal or salt or gravel, and they can take something down for you, and you could work that out and maybe not be quite as expensive on the trucking. So just an idea, and just something to think about moving into the future. I mean, I hope it's something we don't have to worry about, but it could be. It may be a year that we have to get creative, and we're talking about break-even numbers. But I would say, keep in mind, there are some positive things. The next 60 days is going to be very critical for this crop. And yeah, like I said, I just made a list. So hopefully you found that helpful. Maybe helped that mindset a little bit, that the world isn't ending, that there are some things still out there positive that could affect our markets. And of course, you have a good crop insurance policy in case there would be something happen to your production. If you have any questions about this video or any of the other ones that I have done, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. So this is our May video of downward trending markets. And if, yeah, I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching.